Hi, I'm Russell Sturgis. I'm the founder and principal of EAP Mentor. Welcome to the second instalment in our blog series of 2021 on practical mindfulness. And in today's blog, I'm looking at mindfulness in relationship, and I'm particularly talking about our primary relationships of partner or spouse. That being said, the principles that I'm going to be talking about today apply in just about any relationship, whether it's at work or with siblings or children. It's the same sort of dynamics that play out that sit beneath those moments where we have discombobulation in those relationships. Unfortunately, in marriage or in those cohabitative relationships of partner, we find ourselves having our buttons pushed on many occasions, and arguments arise, and people say things to each other that are hurtful, and intimacy disappears, and sometimes this can go on for hours, days, weeks, and the joy, the love, the connectedness that one dreams of having in a relationship just disappears. So what I'm going to do is to propose to you the reason why that happens, and I'm going to do it by sharing a bit of a funny story from my own experience, but it really does highlight how these things play out. In the blog, the written blog, I talk about the concept of the narrative, and I would highly suggest that you take time to read that because it's going to be intrinsic to what I talk to now. The narrative is based on the idea that by the age of 7, we've developed a core set of beliefs through programming from our parents and our society that says this is who we are in the world in which we turn up. Aristotle, and I quote this in the blog, says that give me a boy until he's 7, I'll give you the man. And so it's well understood now in psychological terms that a whole lot of how we perceive the world to be as an adult was well and truly developed into our psyche, into our consciousness by the age of 7. And a big part of that is this idea of being loveless, unlovable, in fact, not being good enough. And so we each have this story that in order to have my needs met, in order to feel loved and lovable, I have to turn up doing certain things. So in my particular situation, in my world, I felt I had to work hard to earn the respect of other people. I was always a bit different. I was raised in a Mormon church, and so I grew up being a bit different. I was interested in complementary health. So there was a lot of para-academics as I grew up as an adult, but as a child, I sort of engaged the world in a slightly different way as well in terms of how I saw it versus how other kids saw the world, and who they wanted to be in the world versus who I wanted to be. And so out of that, with time, it became really evident that if I could work hard at different things that I did, that people would like me, and because that matured as I got older into people respecting me. My partner, Rosie, was put into a situation where she lived next door. She was in rural New South Wales, lived next door to her cousins, and in her world, she had to work really hard at being the favourite so that she could get the attention for people who were setting them up essentially for being good girls or good children. And so in her situation, she developed a narrative about having to compete with others in order to be the favourite. And of course, it meant that she had poor boundaries about what she needed for herself in order to please other people. Because if she could please everybody, then they would love her and she'd become the favourite. And so that, once again, what happens is with age and experience, that matures, and we find ourselves continuing to play these things out throughout our whole life. And in fact, in some cases, and in the majority of cases, people go to their grave still being governed by their story, by their narrative. So here we have this situation, and you can imagine, if you just take a moment to think about it, as my narrative matures, I certainly fit within this realm of needing to earn respect. So in school, I'm involved in theatre, where I get lead roles in plays. In the community, I'm involved in theatre. I'm involved in scouts. There's a whole lot of places in my church where I really rise to the top and I earn the respect of adults. And this becomes an imprinted behaviour for me. With time, I establish myself in community, and I earn the respect in the community through being a really excellent healthcare professional and through getting involved in the community. But what happens with the narrative is that it's never enough, because the 7-year-old doesn't actually know what enough looks like. All it knows is that it's needing respect. So it just keeps on saying, well, you still haven't got enough, you've got to do more. And eventually my situation took me to lecturing internationally, and I became, in my own industry, known during that time for my capacity to be a good public speaker and a good educator. And so I was earning respect internationally. So this is what fills my cup in terms of feeling lovable and having worth, is this idea that if I can travel the world and inspire people and earn their respect, then I have some value. Rosie's is very different. Hers is about, if I can become the favourite, then I have what I need. My cup is filled. I feel lovable and worth if people see me and treat me as if I'm the favourite. And but in her situation, it was a small world. It continued to be within a home and within a small community, as opposed to having to go beyond that. So we come together in relationship. She's driven by the need to prove that she's the favourite, and I'm driven by the need to have my cup filled, and so but in a global way. So my world is a global world, and hers is a very personal and intimate world with family. So just that alone creates two different areas of focus and two areas of priority in terms of needs. So after 12 months, we decided to live together. And Rosie had her 2 daughters, and I had my daughter living with me, and we were living together. And we had this beautiful 2-bedroom home that we were renting, and we thought we would try living together for a year and see how it went. Good thing we did that. So in the upstairs walk-in robe was a chute. And this chute was a laundry chute. So what you could do is take your dirty clothes off, put them in the chute, and they'd go straight down into the laundry downstairs, and then they could be put into the washing machine. And you know, it was just really easy. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. But I loved it even more, and I ended up calling it the magic chute. Now, I had lived on my own on and off for quite a while, for some time before I had met Rosie. And during that time, I had always done all of my own washing and ironing. And all of a sudden, I turn up in this relationship living with Rosie, and I throw my clothes down the chute with the expectation that later on I'll go down and do my washing and ironing. All of a sudden, magically, my clothes appeared in my cupboard washed and ironed. And so this started to happen all the time. And I thought, wow, this is a magic shoot. And this became a bit of a joke because I'd never had this, certainly since I had divorced, which was quite some years before. I hadn't had this happen for a very, very long time, and I was loving it. And we used to play about this whole idea that we had this magic shoot. Just throw your clothes down, they come back washed and ironed. So Rosie was doing this because she felt that this was what she needed to do to prove that she was the favourite, to make sure that I was locking her in as somebody that I really wanted. And she was, and even above, I had a child with high needs that was living with me, adult child with high needs with disability, and this helped to concrete that she was even the favourite over her by doing these sorts of things. Of course, all the while, I'm not realising that she's resenting having to do my washing and ironing. I mean, she's kind of happy to do it because it meets her needs in terms of having her cup filled. But, she'd prefer not to do my stuff if she could. But she's doing it and seems to be doing it happily. I'm in a situation one day where I have a trip coming up where I'm having to go away, and I'm needing some clothes. And so they're still downstairs. They're not magically back in my closet. So I go downstairs to the laundry. They've been washed, not ironed. So I hop in, and there's a pile of ironing there, and I take my shirts and the things that I need out, and I iron those. Skip upstairs, go into the bedroom, and I'll go, "You'll be really pleased, honey." And she'd go, "Why is that?" I said, "I've done my ironing. You don't have to worry about it. And one less thing for you to have to do this week." And she'd go, "Did you do mine?" I went, "No. Why would I do yours? I need these for going away." She goes, "Well, I do yours every week. Why wouldn't you do mine?" And at that point, a lid was not just shut, but triple locked, nailed, put a brick on it, shut, so that there was no more magic shoot. In that moment, there was a moment of tension that emerged in the relationship where Rosie got really annoyed that I hadn't done her ironing, because that's what she does. In other words, we see the world as we are, and we expect the world to turn up in the way that relates to who we are. My world was about going off and travelling, and so I was focused on what I needed to do to meet, to be ready to go and do what I need to do to have my cup filled, which is to earn respect on a global platform. In her way, in her world, it was just purely about needing to be the favourite. But this whole idea that I should have reciprocated, and I should have reciprocated, obviously, makes sense. That she was entitled to have somebody to do her ironing as well, but I hadn't done it at any time. And so we ended up having quite a strong argument and discussion about this particular situation. All of it arising from the fact that we were both turning up in relationships, still being more focused on our stories than we were on ourselves and other people in a loving way. So in other words, what we were doing was functioning from our loveless, unlovable reality as opposed to our lovable or loving reality. And that's the difference in terms of what differentiates a relationship with conflict versus one that is built on love and respect. As a result of that and other things that we went through in our formative years in our relationship, as we became more and more aware of our narratives and what that meant in the relationship and how it impacted on each other, we were able to, with the understanding that we have about how to resolve those things, we were able to start to be more aware of the other person's narrative and needs, and to respond to that in a way that was more loving and respectful, but not only for them in that regards, but also for ourselves. And that was the difference as we began to see a much more richer, connected, loving relationship emerge, was that we were able to balance this greater sense of love for ourselves with this ability to be loving to other people. So in the case of my work, our narrative is ultimately a gift that we give ourselves to make a difference in the world. And so I was able to take my skills that I had earned, that earned respect, I was able to take those skills and use them to serve humanity in a much more conscious and aware way that also embraced not only being kinder to myself, but also being kinder to my sweetheart in terms of my expectations and being aware of her needs in conjunction with my needs. And she was able to do the same with her, where she could be much more self-loving. And instead of saying yes to everybody in order to please everybody, she learnt to say no and do it in a gentle and kind way. For her, she had this amazing capacity to see where people's needs existed, because that's what fed her ability to become the favourite. And so she's become an EAP mentor, and so she's able to use this amazing capacity of insight and compassion and empathy to be able to relate to people, to really know what it is that they're needing, and to be able to guide them to become much more self-loving and no longer constrained, but inspired by their narrative. Loving, connected relationship requires each person to be really clear of their underpinning narrative so that they understand. And this is what happens. And even now, if there's a moment where Rosie or I become discombobulated because of what we know it's our narrative. And so immediately we both take responsibility if we're in that situation. Say, hang on a second, I'm feeling upset at the moment. It's got to be about my narrative. I'm having trouble seeing this. Can you see anything in this? And so we have a conversation. We talk about it. And what happens is we're able to resolve this in a place that is respectful to her and to myself. It's loving to her and to myself. And when you have that as the foundation of your relationship, it's so much easier for intimacy to exist emotionally and physically, so that the capacity to connect at that level is really easy because the love cup is full. It's not having to be sought out in other people in order to be filled, because we are already filling it ourselves. And I just want to go back to the definition of mindfulness from a Western mindfulness perspective, and that is mindfulness is remembering in each moment that you have the opportunity to be kinder, or the choice to be kinder to yourself, to others, and to the planet. And so in relationship, this is about developing the habit of, instead of going into reacting how you've always acted, inspired by your narrative, it's about stopping and remembering you have a choice to be loving to yourself and to other people. Hope you enjoyed this. I hope you can find some insights into what maybe you could do differently in terms of how you relate to in your relationship. What I would suggest, if you'd like to know more and learn how to do this and integrate this as a way of life, then please check out our website, eapmentor.com, where you can find out much more about what it is that we do and how we help people to find relationships with themselves and with others that are based on love and honouring and true consideration of who we are as well as who other people are in terms of how we relate to them. And these principles relate whether it's at work or whether it's with siblings or parents or children. It's the same principles that sit beneath all dynamics of relationship. Thank you for taking time to watch the video. Look forward to continuing this series with you through 2021, and I'll see you next month. Bye.